This story is not about me or my charitable disposition, but instead my story this morning isn't about anyone other than a 100-pound liquid propane gas cylinder deliveryman and connection line technician, whose name was Herbert Scott, alias Scotty. He first fractured on our family's radar when he moved into our home at West Oakridge, and he delivered an Esso gas cylinder and installed the connections to our new water heater. I had recently been employed to Esso Standard Oil's Jamaica headquarters and therefore knew that he was not a regular salaried employee, but worked for a contractor engaged to deliver the service to our customers, including myself. After an uneventful relationship, Scotty failed one day to appear with his toolbox of LPG installation supplies and fittings, his spanners and wrenches, and brass and copper adapters, threaded gas line connections, etc. He apologized profusely, and in the process we learned that his absence resulted from the fact that the depressed neighborhood he lived in was placed under strict curfew, and residents were not permitted to leave that specific morning because of the need to suppress rampant crime in the area. The police force was desperate, and these measures were enforced to reduce the violence perpetrated by armed men and undisciplined fringe supporters of warring political gunslinging gangs. This is how we discovered that Scotty lived in the bowels of the inner city with his wife and 3 young kids during the tumultuous 70s. We were then in Jamaica under the governance of a PNP administration describing itself as believing in something called, quote, democratic socialism. But they actually pandered to the precepts of our Cuban neighbors, whose leader, Fidel Castro, and his citizens were held unflinchingly under the thumb of the Russian Soviet regime. Not surprisingly, rumor had it that the JLP, the truly democratic party in opposition, had welcomed a watching brief from the United States, allegedly staffed by the notorious CIA. Scotty was not a fool, and although he quoted Bible verses, had enough street smarts to navigate his responsibilities, with enough of that, quote, I am minding my own business profile, to be unmolested by the unlawful actions of adherents to political leaders on both sides of the aisle. What was of great concern to him was that he was among the least paid, although mercifully he was at least employed in a position that I could authoritatively confirm was not going to disappear anytime soon. However, as a casual employee, our protagonist did not benefit from any of the enlightened labor relations principles and was at the lowest rung of the compensation ladder. Esso's management did, however, extract from all our independent contractors a solemn undertaking that specific minimums would apply, and we saw to it that reasonable conditions of service prevailed among the more readily forgotten elements of our operations. The policy ensured we avoided labor-related unnecessary service disruptions. Apart from poverty and the challenge of surviving at subsistence level, Scotty and his family felt constantly threatened with the danger from criminals on the run from police and armed to the teeth with AR-15s and other favored military-styled weapons. Their practice was to terrorize entire neighborhoods at night, exchanging bullets with law enforcement patrols. He directly, on a delivery at home, gave my wife further details of his children being unable to sleep, being forced most nights to lay flat on the ground after dark, hiding from murderers or corrupt police looking for their share of the spoils of intimidation and harassment. Scotty expressed his dire need for help. He was too much of a decent human to be looking for handouts, but he needed guidance, and as they would say, some backative from a source higher up. Someone to guide him so that he could plan his escape from the living hell he called home. It is reasonable to assume that my wife got the idea that a charitable venture to give assistance in the circumstances was indicated. So we gave serious consideration as to what could be done to help Scotty and his family in the crisis of criminality which gripped the poorer sections of Kingston. On occasions, when we would be lying in our comfortable beds at our home in the dead of night in the hills 1,800 feet above sea level, we would clearly hear the rat-a-tat-tat echoing of gunfire getting louder as it kept wafting up from the plains below. When we thought of Scotty's family being trapped and scared by the web of crass criminality that surrounded him, we were overwhelmed with a sensation of helplessness and vulnerability in a miserable existence. With Monica's wholehearted support, I determined that because I had the ability to make a difference, I should pursue at least in this single case that stared us in the face, a solution to the problem. The truth be known, my assistant Michael King and I, both being lawyers, did frequently provide legal assistance pro bono regularly to salaried employees with steady, strong incomes who were grateful for the way we eased their pain in the thorny passage of home ownership. Alas, however, Scotty, literally the least of the apostles, worked merely as casual help to a subcontractor, and this reality increased the size of the challenge. We could not vouch for him in the way we did for permanent staff. Therefore, to assist Scotty in a transition from the environment he called home required more than just sympathy and encouraging words. A serious plan and commitment was essential. What would it cost? And where would the money come from to purchase a home in a better era was an even more complicated issue. But as the philosopher says, quote, all great constructs are built from a simple thought. Once I'd made up my mind, I called Scotty's boss, with whom I had some influence, and told him that I wanted to speak with Scotty whenever he would give him permission to speak with me, and that the issue was about safety and security of the worker and his family. My advice to Scotty was firstly to start looking for a house far from his current environment, one that he considered suitable. He should then let me know who the vendor was. Also, he should open an account, if he hadn't already done so, with the credit union at the facility he was attached to. Fortunately, those already existed and serviced regular and contractors' workers. This would make it possible to obtain a loan from making up a deposit on a house purchase. I undertook to have a word with the officers of the credit union. I promised to use my personal goodwill and Esther's good name to introduce him to an understanding manager of a building society so that he could apply for a mortgage loan. Monica and I assisted with the completion of the forms so that Scott's position as pre-qualified mortgager could be approved. Within less than 2 months, Scotty found a house in a respectable area which needed some repair work, but which he could perform himself given his own skills. To get the credit union loan for the deposit would need assets other than his account balance, but Scotty had no such ready asset with a known market value, which he could pledge in support of such a loan. I remembered how he travelled with an elaborate toolbox and questioned him carefully. I told him to put together a list of all the tools he owned. It was all added up to a fairly decent list, and a value was attached to each item. I made him warrant that he would not sell the tools, and on that basis urged the credit union to grant him a loan based on the value of his toolbox as the collateral. His loan application was successful, and his application to become a member of the building society was approved. The sale agreement, using the legal text I drafted, was eventually executed, and the deposit money mentioned was paid by the credit union on behalf of the purchaser. Scotty was assisted in making a statement concerning his regular earnings and to boost figures to determine affordability. We included odd jobs regularly done in servicing on his own time, householder stoves and water heaters, along with an affidavit as to those extra sources of income. My secretary and I monitored the mortgage application and handled any questions raised by the mortgage company's lawyers. Finally, the day came when he was to take possession of his own home. It was too significant a milestone for any of us to fail to participate, and Scotty broke down in tears. His words of gratitude were muffled and never quite came out the way he wanted. he didn't have to be concerned with giving thanks. Monica and I made sure to express our appreciation to all the staff at the various offices we dealt with. Because we wanted his legal expenses to be nil, Michael and I did whatever legal work was required. Most of Scotty's gratitude was directed to my wife, Miss Gordon, whom he claimed was the person who pressured me to give him all the help he got from all those who wanted him out of the danger as quickly as possible. Even when I had left Esso and was in private practice, he would stop by to remind me how blessed my wife and I were for leading him and his family into a secure residence. Scotty would say on each and every such occasion, "Yes, my boss, and my deliverer, I know you never wanted me to suffer in the wilderness of the ungodly, but it was your wife who pushed you and made sure I got my own home. Remember, so, what she said to you in my presence. Ramon, you must have to make sure that Scotty and his family get their own safe house to live in." It was indeed a charitable venture, and I've counted myself fortunate to have been given the opportunity to serve fellow humans in the journey to a successful and happy celebration.